I'm Akiva Fox, and this is Clear Shakespeare, the read-along Shakespeare podcast. People are always telling you what to think about Shakespeare. So William Shakespeare wrote a few dozen plays about 400 years ago, and ever since, people have been performing those plays, and writing about those plays, and arguing about those plays, till it's like a metric ton of opinions. And then other people have had opinions about their opinions, and on and on and on and on, up to you. So it can sometimes seem like reading or watching Shakespeare's plays is like that game Telephone we used to play in kindergarten, where you'd start out with a phrase and then you'd whisper it to your neighbor and then he'd whisper it to his neighbor and she'd whisper it to her neighbor and on till you got to the end of the line and the phrase had transformed from the beginning to the end and we all laughed hilariously. Anyway, that's how I see Shakespeare's plays. We start out with some guy writing some words down on paper in 1590 whatever in London, England, and hands them off to some actors. And there have been so many handoffs since then that the words are almost unrecognizable now, because that's 400 years of people whispering to their neighbors, only if their neighbors also had a violent disagreement with them about what those words meant. And along the way, Shakespeare also became important, incredibly culturally important, like second only to the Bible important, especially in England and America, but also in Germany and Russia and Japan. And so that importance is a whole other layer to get through. And quite apart from what we did to Shakespeare over the course of 400 years, 400 years also passed. The language changed. The culture changed. Just think about all the things in our television shows that will make no sense in the year 2400. That change over time is not a small layer to get through either. It can be really painful to read and watch Shakespeare at times, even if you know it well and have studied it for years, which most people haven't, because there's so many layers built around it that it becomes distant. And one of those layers is that you're supposed to love it. Well, what if you don't love these plays? What if you don't like them? What if they sound like fakey gibberish, or a bunch of people in tights on stage feel like they have nothing to do with you, or somebody makes you read them for a class, and you're still supposed to like them? How do you get through that layer? So, that's where Clear Shakespeare comes in. I have personally spent the better part of the last 20 years of my life working at and thinking about how to strip away all that concretion from Shakespeare's plays. Some of it might, be a fool's errand, because those 400 years of people are very loud, and sometimes old cultural artifacts just outlive their ability to communicate. But I don't know. I think there really is great beauty in there. I don't think something lasts this long without having real value. I think these plays were weird, and they were original when they were written, and I think that weirdness and originality shouldn't go away just because they went all establishment and a bunch of famous people had opinions about them. So what I want to do with this podcast is to get you closer to the words, because ultimately that's all these plays are. They're the same words they're mostly the same words anyway. They're the same words that Shakespeare wrote down 400 years ago. Everything that's built up around them, that's commentary. That's an idea people have laid on top of those words. And some of what they've said is very useful, but that's like step 2 or step 3 or 17 to understanding the plays. For this podcast, I want you to follow along with me. And that means we both have the play in front of us. We're going to be looking at the same words, and I'm going to read them out loud. And every time I feel like there's something getting in the way of communication, I'm going to stop and try to clear it away for you. So if there's a word that needs defining or a word whose meaning has changed, I'll interpret that. If the phrase has gotten so famous that it's hard to remember the meaning in the context of the original play in the first place, I'll try to bring out that original meaning. If there's wordplay or a rhythmic trick or some other aspect of the sound of the language, I'll let you know about it. If there's a cultural reference that was awesome in 1602, but not so much now, I'll let you know about it. If there's something about character or staging that isn't obvious just from the text alone, I'll try to bring that up. Basically, I want you to have enough information so that you can make up your own mind about what you're reading. I'll let you know if I have a strong opinion about a point, but, if what I'm saying sounds like garbage, stop the playback and yell at me, or yell at me while I'm talking. At least your interpretation is going to be based on the words and not on this hearsay or general themes or plot summaries that usually make up how we talk about Shakespeare now. I don't want to be just another person telling you what to think about Shakespeare, because there's 400 years of those guys.